Season 3's been a bit of a strange beast. Don't get me wrong, Rick and Morty's still as good as ever. It's still weird, funny, crazy and out there, and full of fun and thought-provoking concepts, and the Tales from the Citadel episode is some fucking on-point political satire, but this season I just kind of felt like the balance between Morty's family life and Rick's high-concept sci-fi life shifted a little bit too much in Rick's favour. Now, before I go any further, I know that I'm likely to get comments along these lines. Oh my god, Stuart doesn't like Season 3. Stubagful hates Season 3. If you don't like Rick and Morty, why are you watching it? No, I like Season 3 a lot, okay? Season 3 is good. Okay, I'm going to hold those sentences on screen so no one can take me out of context and project some bullshit onto me and try and explain away my opinion as a means of ensuring that you don't have to take me seriously, which is what people do all the fucking time whenever I talk about anything with a huge, overly passionate fan base. I am one of you, okay? I am a fan of Rick and Morty, but we all like things for different reasons, and I seem to be the odd one out in finding the most interesting thing about Rick and Morty being the way in which Rick, being a self-destructive, self-involved know-it-all, affects the family. And again, while I adore the show, I do feel that the most loving thing that a fan can do is voice their opinion about where they'd like it to go next. So there, I like Season 3, there is no other way to interpret that sentence, so don't. The only thing that I'm trying to say in this video is that a few of the creative decisions this year have felt a bit counterintuitive to me. Now, I do love the Season 3 opener. There's no denying that they managed to pull off one hell of a comeback from a cliffhanger that basically had the entire dynamic of the show at stake. The Rick Shank redemption effortlessly uses continuity porn as a means of furthering the plot, and the extremity with which it disposes of said pieces of continuity porn, the sheer amount of carnage that Rick causes in the lives of his alternate selves, it's so brutal that you just can't help but laugh at how far the show's willing to go to A, come back from that cliffhanger, and B, make it feel as though coming back from that cliffhanger has been earned. It's not cheap, there's no simplistic retconning going on here. It's high stakes, lots of action, a shit ton of interesting ideas. It's pretty much everything that Rick and Morty fans have come to love about the show rolled into one episode. It's like a mini Rick and Morty movie. My feelings on Season 3 as a whole, though, are mostly based on, in hindsight, I have found it a bit bizarre that at the end of Rick Shank Redemption, the show decides to up and do the big thing that we've had hinted at for almost the entire series by this point. Beth and Jerry actually do the deed and split up. And yet Beth doesn't really get that much focus throughout the rest of it. Her focal episode is left until episode 9. She's almost entirely absent in Vindicators, Rest and Ricklaxation, Tales from the Citadel, and Morty's Mind Blowers. And yeah, they are all good episodes, some of them really good, and they are all funny. I was just kind of missing Beth, and I feel that they could have done a lot more with her during the breakup with Jerry. One of my favourite jokes in this series is probably the one where we see her making a model horse out of horseshoes. I just find her such an interesting character, and I really wanted to see more of how the breakup had affected her. The relative lack of Summer's been odd as well. While I really enjoyed the episode where she's a focal point, Rick mancing the stone, and I do love that she's the one who desperately wants to get Rick back into their lives in Rick Shank Redemption, because that makes total sense considering how Summer's behaved over the last couple of years. But yeah, again, her relative absence this season has been really quite bizarre. One thing I liked so much as I watched the series grow and evolve was seeing Summer become more central to Rick's world. Rick's already had Morty plugged into this insane sci-fi shit since way before the pilot, and Morty is a typically subservient type of character who doesn't really challenge Rick, whereas Summer's quite different. She does challenge Rick, she tells him what she thinks of him all the time, and she offers an interesting perspective on events. Summer and Morty are essentially the two sides of the Doctor Who companion archetype, the nice but dim follower and the almost intellectual equal, although Morty has kinda changed a bit recently. Just after Rick mancing the stone and Pickle Rick, I just felt like we didn't really see enough of her is all. I did think at the end of Pickle Rick that we were about to be headed into some darker, more intense inter-family conflict. You know, Rick's intentionally sabotaged their marriage, he's distracting Beth from dealing with her own and her children's problems. Again, don't get me wrong, when we do dark inter-family conflict stuff, it's fucking great. Whirly-Durly Conspiracy is easily one of my new favourites. As I've said before, Jerry's my favourite character, character, and I just love how much shit this story throws at him. He's had his marriage ruined, his kids taken away from him, he's pressured into an assassination plot, which, considering what Rick did, who wouldn't at least try and go through with that? He's lost everything and he's at his lowest point. And watching such a pathetic character fight through all that is both hilarious and endearing. And the Beth, Summer and Morty angle is great too, and it actually does one of the things that I've been waiting for since Beth and Jerry split up. Beth tries to handle one of Rick's mad sci-fi plots on her own, and she finds a solution of her own invention. And we also get to see what had been growing throughout the series until this point, the change that Morty's undergone since he started having adventures with Rick. He's been inheriting Rick's cruel and twisted and ruthless streak, and that ending just gives you such chills. It was fucking amazing. Actually, thinking about it, the series does mostly do what I was hoping for, at least in parts. I think it was probably just Vindicators that coloured my opinion on it. I know it does kinda make sense to put a big, overblown, over-the-top sci-fi episode right after the more down-to-earth, character-centric Pickle Rick, but Vindicators... While yes, it is funny, it really is quite an odd episode by Rick and Morty standards. For one thing, there's no B storyline, and it doesn't really have any of the Rick's crazy sci-fi madness crossing over into and affecting normal suburban family life that I loved so much about episodes like Me Seeks and Destroy, or the beautiful intersecting storyline of Ricksty Minutes. Vindicators was probably the most... Okay, I know it sounds stupid to say this, but... normal. It was the most normal, conventional cartoon episode that I've seen from Rick and Morty so far. It's mostly just a mishmash of pop culture parodies. Again, don't get me wrong, not a bad thing, and Rick and Morty does have a long history of parody. I mean, the show does primarily work with the pop culture reference points, but it's normally got a lot more going on than that, and Vindicators... well, yes, it's funny, and it has admittedly got a clever idea for how to have Rick be the bad guy and the good guy at the same time. I mean, it's an elegant demonstration of Rick's fractured psyche, if anything, but the thing is, I kind of already knew that about Rick. And I just felt that a lot of the scenes were a bit overlong, and the almost total lack of Beth, Summer and Jerry kinda bugged me, especially given how the previous one had ended. I mean, Pickle Rick was fucking brilliant because it intercut an interesting story where Rick turns himself into a pickle and then attempts to stop being a pickle, while Summer, Morty and Beth talk over their family issues and how Rick's affected their lives with the school therapist. Structurally, Pickle Rick is fucking great, and that ending where Rick's just done something horrible and openly lied to Beth to get out of talking their problems over. He's using his crazy sci-fi life to avoid facing up to his problems and the fact that he's ruining his family's lives. That's the entire point of Rick Sanchez. And Beth, recently broken up with her husband, she wants to deny it too and act as if nothing's wrong, just like Rick does. There's so much momentum for character drama and development by the end of this episode. Almost too much. So when we go straight to Vindicators like that, which is a typical Rick-centric, over-the-top sci-fi affair without much of the character development that I was looking for, I mean, aside from showing just how much Morty's changed over the course of the show, I don't know, I just felt a bit deflated by Vindicators is all. Yes, it's funny, but it's kind of illustrative of how Season 3 sets itself up to be a lot more confrontational than it actually is. Though as said, don't get me wrong, it's full of solid episodes that wouldn't look out of place in the previous 2 seasons, and it's still one of my favourite cartoons, but I was kind of expecting character development to be a key component of this series in particular, given how that first episode ended. It does it with Morty, just less so for Beth, Jerry and Summer. Although a lot of these complaints do seem rather trivial when you consider just how many episodes in this season that I absolutely love the shit out of. Morty's Mind Blowers, for example. That was an incredibly funny and tight as fuck bit of television. I did get the feeling that they should probably leave interdimensional television alone for a while, because yes, while it's an incredible concept, you don't want to overdo it like the Simpsons Halloween shows. And this idea of Rick storing erased memories of Morty's in this inside-out style memory chamber, and wrapping those sketches around a plot of them both accidentally erasing their memories and attempting to remember who they are, just like with Ricksty Minutes, it makes a lot of structural sense. That's what I love so much about Rick and Morty. It's got so much going on in one 20-minute 20-minute episode with all of its threads woven together into this tight little ball. And Morty's Mind Blowers is a great example of the type of Rick and Morty episode that I love. While the ball of stuff that Vindicators and Rest and Relaxation play with, there's just not as many threads woven together, and it's a lot looser than usual. If this metaphor makes any fucking sense whatsoever, which it probably doesn't. Another episode I love the shit out of, but for different reasons, the Ricklantis mix-up, which I still always think of as Tales from the Citadel, because... come on, it just makes more sense, you know? It's a bit of a departure from what Rick and Morty usually does, but in a good way. While episodes like Vindicators are a departure to the more conventional, Tales from the Citadel is a really inventive patchwork of stories of Rick and Mortys from alternate timelines, all living together in the Citadel, which is like this little society. I know that my complaints about Vindicators and this season's relative lack of family life are me railing against departures, but I'm not against the series making departures and trying something new every once in a while. Quite the opposite, in fact. Just Tales from the Citadel is a shit ton more imaginative and creative and crazy and out there than Vindicators was. The narrative just effortlessly glides between the different Ricks and different Mortys of this bizarre society that's entirely composed of two seemingly very different archetypes. A Rick is supposed to be the smart one, the Morty the stupid one, but over the course of the episode it explores much deeper questions about how we're sociologically conditioned to act in a certain way based on who we were born as, and whether you could ever possibly consider that to be a fair and just society. Many a Morty becomes a certain person in this society based on their being a Morty. Ricks become certain people based on their being a Rick. But the episode asks, is there more to being a Rick and more to being a Morty than superficially resembling the two characters? The cop Morty and his partner Rick that we follow are very unlike the Rick and Morty that we've been following throughout the series, as is the Morty that's running for president. They're all from completely different universes from completely different backgrounds, and yet under this system and in this society, they're defined by a generally accepted image of what constitutes a Rick and what constitutes a Morty. Tales from the Citadel is a really smart bit of social satire, and one where every single character is just the same two characters over and over again. It's just such a fucking amazing idea, and easily one of the show's best. Anyway, as said, while Season 3's probably my least favourite so far as a whole, it does still do all of the usual stuff that I expect from Rick and Morty, even if it doesn't really shift the dynamic as much as I'd hoped. Still, now that we know that a Season 4 is definitely happening, all that us fans need to do now is... everyone chill the fuck out and let them take their time with it this time. We clear? No more where's the next season memes, no screeching about your impatience, just wait for them to finish it in their own time. Just think straight here. This is not a massive budget, major schedules filler 22 episode a season pop culture fixture like The Simpsons or Family Guy. It's 10 episodes of a high concept, well developed, lovingly crafted and incredibly imaginative sci-fi comedy. These things take time. Leave these people alone and let them get on with it at their own pace.